Composite Gloves here. This is the 11th video in the Master from the Ground Up tutorial series. Today I'm going to cover feedback. Now feedback is a complicated topic. So first off, I'm just going to make some general observations about what it does, because that's what I see a lot of other tutorials kind of doing. And then I'm going to go way farther actually, and I'm going to talk about why it does what it does, because feedback changes your sound drastically, and it's really important to understand why it's changing your sound the way it is. And so in order to understand feedback, you have to understand routing. So if you haven't watched video 4, go watch video 4. Then you have to understand the routing tab, which I haven't explained yet. So I'm going to give you a basic overview because I plan to cover this in detail on another video. So right off the bat, let's just use some feedback real quick. And I just want to show you what the potential or what it does to your sound, because it really is a big change and you need to know what is happening to your sound. So right now I have a sine wave. I have a square wave. Now I have a sine wave. Then we'll introduce feedback. And it's important to have this oscillator go through, and you see we have some overtones. You also notice that we have one tone, but when we turn our feedback, it increases in volume for a little bit. Gets louder, but you see some overtones start to creep up. Like, what's that about? And then all of a sudden you see the entire pitch change, and you'll see that as I turn it up, it gets worse. And check this out. This is what happens when you play more than one note on a feedback loop. It's like super weird, okay? So we're going to talk about what this does now. And if there's any subject that is like truly a science with a lot of math, it would be the subject of feedback. It has been one of the greatest discoveries we've had. So the way it works is, it's I've already kind of explained it. So we're going to talk about okay, I just got to start from the ground up. So we're going to do a new sound. We're going to make it a sine wave. Sine wave. So we have sine wave. And what happens is you have your oscillator 1 right here. So if you don't know how to get to this menu, there's a bunch of tabs up here. Click on the one that says routing. So you have a sine wave. Oscillator 1 is being sent, and we have talked about routing, but I've conveniently left this part out. And now we're going to talk about it a bit. So we have filter 1 and filter 2, right? We're going to send it to both parallel. And we're going to set our serial parallel routing to parallel. So now this is being sent to filter 1 and filter 2. And we're going to set the mix to put out mix 1 and mix 2. And we're going to turn both filters on. So there's our signal. If we turn our filters off, no signal will get through, because it's being sent through there and then nothing happens. So there you have it. All right, now that we've done that, there are a few more things I want to talk about feedback at the beginning, but I guess I'll talk about them as we keep going. So we know that it's being sent through filter 1. So oscillator 1, if we were to picture it on our here routing tab, it's being sent out. It's being sent through filter 1, some signal, and then the other signal, the other half, is being sent down here and through filter 2. It comes out through both sets of effects, whatever we put in there, and it gets consolidated, goes through another set of effects that we have more options for, gets sent out through here, more effects, and then eventually it just comes out your speakers with some more things that I'm just not going to talk about yet. So that's basically what's happening. So whenever you switch these knobs, these sliders, I don't know why I keep calling them knobs. Everything to me is just a knob. So you move these sliders up and down, and you're basically telling it where to send it through on our little matrix here. And this happens behind the scenes in all your VSTs. You just don't see it happening. And the reason modular synths are so cool, I'm sorry I'm getting off topic, but modular synths are cool because you have complete control over this, and you can just do whatever the heck you want. Here we're kind of limited in the way it goes, but Massive is famous for its flexibility. So anyways, well, I mean, nowadays there are some synths that are just like phenomenal in regards to flexibility. Anyways, we have our oscillator being sent through our filters, and it comes out. So now we're going to introduce feedback. So we have this little thing called feedback down here. That's what all these FBs, it is not Facebook, it is feedback. And you'll notice there's this blue line. And when I turn it on, boom, blue line appears to be and it will go to whatever feedback we touch. What does this mean? What is the meaning of the blue line? Well, it sends out oscillator 1 and it comes out, and some of our signal is taken, it's kidnapped by our feedback loop, and the rest comes out. And it goes, whoa, and it follows our blue line. And it will insert effects if you want. Those are these guys, by the way. I haven't talked about them yet. And they comes back, gets to the feedback, and then what the heck is this? You could choose where you want the feedback to go, filter 1 or filter 2, and you can send it through our matrix again. If you send it through filter 1, you get this infinite loop. If you send it through filter 2, you would not get an infinite loop. It would eventually reach the end, according to our matrix here. Now it's being sent out, filter the feedback loop. When we turn it on, you'll see that it's taking that same signal and increases in gain. So for a while, you'll just see the volume increase. That's how these amp knobs work. These amp knobs take signal that's in phase, meaning the peaks line up, and it increases that phase. That's why I said it was one of the greatest discoveries. It's basically what led to regeneration, taking really weak signals and amplifying them through a feedback loop. And there's different kinds of feedback loops, and there's different setups, and there's different routing, and you increase the volume. But there's a point where you max out, you go past 0 dB digitally speaking, and it has to do something else. And they've modeled it to react like, or they've tried to model it like it would react just like an analog synthesizer. And I don't know if you've ever heard of Monarch by Native Instruments, but that's why that one's such a big deal, is their algorithms are just spot on. So a real important note to take away is this feedback is digital feedback, meaning it's taking numbers and values and running them through a preset algorithm. So it will behave slightly differently than real feedback. It's also more of an exact response because it will take values and run them through an algorithm. Like, how much more exact can you get? Whereas you can have all sorts of unknown variables with like just the way your capacitors and resistors are built in an electronics setup. So it will take our signal, and we'll turn our feedback on, and you'll see the volume increase. And you also see some overtones happen. That's because it's taking our feedback loop and reintroducing it, which when it reaches that peak, it has to introduce some harmonics. But get this. That is not even the same note. What the heck is the deal with that? Well, when it reaches 0, it does what's called self-oscillating. So go look up self-oscillating and go look up positive feedback if you want to know more about this, because it's really intense. But it's important to note, and this is what I wanted to say earlier, that the frequencies, so pay attention to the graph. So we have our one line, and as we turn this up, we notice that all these overtone harmonics happen, but also that the tones go down. They don't just go up. It's not just adding to that signal. Somehow lower frequencies are getting in, which means that it's moving away from the value you select. So we hit a key, and we know that we're selecting a Hertz value, and it's moving away from that logarithmically. So if you haven't looked up a logarithmic graph yet, somehow you just haven't listened to me yet, go look one up. I've explained them a little bit, but you'll notice that low frequency content increases logarithmically as the upper frequency. So we'll appear to have a lot more upper frequency, and we really do. We have tons and tons and tons more upper frequency than we do lower because it's logarithmic. And on this graph, you can see it all because it's a logarithmic graph. So as I turn it up, look, you'll see a ton more upper frequency and not so much lower. And when you go look up the positive feedback thing, you'll see linear and logarithmic everywhere. And the reason that is because it's taking that value and moving logarithmically away from it, which is why our pitch changes the way it does. You also know that as I hit different notes, the pitch changes kind of. Not really. It's not that sensitive to pitch because of the nature of the feedback loop. But if we stay on our volume thing, like if your volume's short and you don't want to turn your master knob up, that's a great way of dealing with things. Well, I mean, some people would disagree just because of the method of using it and what could happen if you do go over that peak. Now, there's one other thing that's really weird that happens. And so let's say we're playing and it's feedbacking our oscillator 1 loop. Okay, so oscillator 1's coming out through the feedback loop and back. And once you hit the feedback, if you hold down that note but you turn this off, it behaves differently than the other way. So what I mean is your feedback will still be going through. So you'll get just feedback. Your original signal, you'll hear it leave if you have it set up to do the infinite loop thing. So we have it. We'll turn our feedback all the way on. We'll turn our amp off. Now what we have is feedback. And look, you can turn it off, but because I'm still sending this signal through, it's still there. Now get this. I've let go of the key now, but because of the way the algorithm works, it says there's still feedback in this loop. So I can continue to play for a little bit. They've set it up so that there's like a certain amount of time afterwards that the feedback is still there. So I could play it for a little bit and then the feedback will eventually just disappear and you'll have no sound, just like we technically should have. And there it goes, gone. So that's just weird. And now if you turn it up, I'm holding down a key. If I turn it up just a little bit, boom, our feedback comes right back. There it is. But I just turned it off again. Now I let go. And if I hold down the key and move my feedback around, I should still hear feedback, theoretically. And I'm still able to mess around with it. But as soon as I change keys, no go. Yeah, really weird. So go look up feedback. Go look up the math behind feedback. It's really incredible what's happening with the whole gain structures. It's really more of an advanced topic, but it's important to know what it does. And it behaves differently with the waveforms you put in it. And again, pushing the multiple keys at the same time can do a lot of weird stuff. Pitch just kind of goes out the door when you have it up so high. Like that's a low note, and that's a high note. Like you can't even tell. So I've really tried my best to explain this adequately. This is definitely something that will probably have more advanced videos if I ever decide I want to do more advanced videos on it. Go look up digital signal processing if you sort of want to get your head more around feedback. Besides the other topics I told you about, just learning more about that will kind of explain to you why digital behaves the way it does and why analog behaves the way it does. Check out my music. Get this video to someone who would appreciate it. And like it and comment. If I got something wrong, definitely let me know, or comment. Just let other people know hey, he's a little off. Honorable try, but didn't quite get it. And yeah, subscribe if you enjoy learning about these things, and have a blessed day.